Good morning, students. Once again, I am back, Joydeep Datta, your teacher of English. Today, I would like to discuss with you the poem that is at the fag end of your syllabus of class 10, The Snail, written by William Cowper. At first, a lucid reading of the poem. To grass or leaf or fruit or wall, the snail sticks close nor fears to fall, as if he grew there, house and all together. Within that house secure he hides, when danger imminent betides, of storm or other harm besides, of weather. Give but his horns the slightest touch, his self-collecting power is such, he shrinks into his house with much displeasure. Wherever he dwells alone, except himself had chattels none, well satisfied to be his own whole treasure. Thus, hermit like his life he leads, nor partner of his banquet needs, and if he meets one, only feeds the faster. Who seeks him must be worse than blind. He and his house are so combined, if finding it he fails to find its master. So let's explain. To grass or leaf or fruit or wall, the snail sticks close. Snail, it's a very common creature. All of us have seen it, especially in the rainy seasons and in other seasons too. The snail, all of us have seen that. It sticks to grass or to leaf or to fruit or to wall. The snail sticks close. It's a quite natural phenomenon all of us are quite familiar with. Nor fears to fall, and it sticks so fast. Actually, there is no fear to fall, as if he grew there, house and all together. And whenever we closely look at a snail, sometimes we are confused whether the snail is born and brought up there. And sometimes it seems to be so immobile, sometimes it seems to be so immovable, sometimes it happens that there is no fall, there is no fear of fall. Sometimes it happens. Within that house secure he hides, when danger imminent betides of storm or weather, harm besides of weather. In the second stanza, actually, this poem moves from the natural world to some spiritual world. There is a shift, a movement is there. Within that house secure he hides. There is a shell into which the snail lives actually, and that shell is the house of the snail, and irremovably that house is anchored to the snail. Within that house secure he hides. Sometimes the snail hides itself within that cell, within that house, within its cell, when danger imminent betides. Whenever there is some danger that may be arising from surrounding world, whenever some danger is there, it can smell a danger. Whenever it smells a danger, it hides itself within its cell. And this particular expression, danger imminent, actually it's a very common expression in the evangelical literature, spiritual literature. As for example, Bunyan's Pilgrim's Progress is there, and danger imminent, it's a very common expression in that at that time in the spiritual literature, and it was imminent danger, but here it has been used as danger imminent. There is a kind of inversion in order. Danger imminent betides. Whenever there is some danger imminent betides, it hides itself within that cell. There is some spiritual undertone. Danger may be some moral crisis, some spiritual dilemma. Whenever there such sort of dilemma or such sort of crisis comes in our life, we should, with the help of our own soul, we should go within, and we have to find out the real solace from within. That is that may be undertone here of storm or other harm besides of weather. But as the superficial meaning goes, whenever there is some calamity, whenever there is some storm, or whenever there is some other forms of dangers, it hides itself within itself. Give but his horse the slightest touch, his self-collecting power is such, he shrinks into his house with much displeasure. There are two antennas of the snail, and whenever we give a slightest touch to its antenna, what happens? With the slightest touch, its self-collecting power is such. Actually, it collects itself, it recoils itself within the cell. He shrinks into his house with much displeasure, and Obviously, it's a very dissatisfying incident for the snail. The snail does not generally want to hide itself within the cell, but sometimes, whenever there is some problem in the outside world, what does happen? Actually, it hides itself within the cell. Wherever he dwells alone, except himself as shattles none, well satisfied to be his own whole treasure. It's a very important stanza. Where he dwells, wherever he dwells alone. It's a particular way of life that the snail is accustomed to. Actually, the snails are very much fond of a solitary life. Generally, we the people are not fond of solitary life, but the snails are fond of solitary life. What do they do? Wherever he dwells alone. So naturally, he dwells alone. He lives alone. He prefers that sort of living, except himself as chattels none, and he has no other chattels. You just think of the situation. We the human beings are fond of so many chattels. Chattels means wealth, properties. We have so many properties, so many things we have in our possession. But the snails, they don't have any sort of possession. They have only one possession, that is itself. The snail itself is its own only possession. Well satisfied to be his own whole treasure. Well satisfied. And there is no displeasure. There is no dissatisfaction. There's a particular point of merit that we should always keep in our mind, that we are, in spite of having so much possessions, we are not at all satisfied. We are not at all satisfied with whatever we have in our grip, in our control, in our possession. We are not at all satisfied. But the snails, they are satisfied. They are satisfied with himself or herself or itself, whatever you say. They are satisfied. Their satisfaction level is so deep, so dense. We have to follow that sort of satisfaction. Thus, hermit-like, his life he leads, nor partner of his banquet needs, and if he meets one, only feeds the faster. So this is the hermit-like life that the snail leads. Hermit means, in Bengali, what we call sannyasi. In English term, sannyasi is used in English too, sannyasi, or the monk, or the saint. The snails also, to some extent, lead a life of that of a hermit. Thus, hermit-like his life he leads, nor partner of his banquet needs. Because the hermits also are fond of the life of seclusion, because they are meditating people. Therefore, the snails are also leading a life of seclusion. But there is one particular point of contrast. The hermits, as they live a very ascetic life, and they are not at all fond of, or they are not at all attached to house, but the snails are irremovably attached to their house. The house, that is anchored to their body fixedly. So that is the particular thing that the snails are. Actually, the snails are identified by the house and identical with the house, but the human hermits don't have that sort of house. Who seeks him must be worse than blind. Oh, there is one particular line that I have forgot to explain. Nor partner of his banquet needs. Whenever there is a banquet, banquet means a particular feast. Feast when we eat with a company is called banquet. But when there is a banquet, the snails need no company. They can enjoy their feast all alone. And if he meets one, only feeds the faster. If some other creature comes his way, then what happens? He eats faster. He feeds faster. Who seeks him must be worse than blind. He and his house are so combined. If finding it, he fails to find his master. A man who wants to find out the snail from its cell, what may happen? He may be, as Cowper has said here, he may be worse than the blind. He may be worse than the blind, because he may not find out the snail that he wants to seek. That's all. That is the explanation of the snail by William Cowper. And one thing I should say in the conclusion of the poem, that William Cowper's life himself had some sort of similarity with the life of snail. William Cowper himself had some sort of likeness. Therefore, this poem is one of the most fantastic poems that William Cowper has written, and it has been in our syllabus. I think the explanation will satisfy you. If you are satisfied with the explanation, then obviously subscribe my channel and stay tuned. Thank you.